This is the Chassidic Story Project with Barak Hullman, podcasting from Jerusalem, Israel. This podcast is sponsored by listeners just like you. To become a supporter of this podcast, please go to HasidicStory.com, HASIDIC story.com. You'll never know, you'll never know, you'll never know, you'll never know. The town of Opatów in Poland was bubbling with excitement because there was going to be a wedding of the rabbi of the town, who everybody loved and appreciated, Rabbi Avram Yoshua Heschel, also known as the Apter Rav, or the Ohev Yisrael. All of the Jewish townspeople wanted to help the rabbi and his family prepare for the wedding in any way they possibly could. And since the wedding was going to take place in the Kala's hometown, all of the local wagon drivers knew that they had a special role to play, because somebody would have to drive the family and all of the guests and all of the gifts and clothes and food and everything that they were going to bring to the wedding. Everything was going to have to be transported by wagon. And so all the wagon drivers were very excited about the profits that they could make, and also about helping their rabbi, of course. And so they started making plans. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, they greased the axles and reupholstered the seats. They discussed the best places to stop along the way, where to spend the night, and how to take care of their horses for the long journey. But now, it was 2 weeks before the wedding, and nothing seemed to be happening. The drivers were waiting for the Apter Rav to come and tell them about their plans and hire the drivers, but the Apter Rav and his family didn't come. The drivers didn't understand what was going on. But it wasn't just the drivers that didn't understand what was going on. Also, in the rabbi's own home, his family was wondering, how come nothing is happening? How come nobody's clothes have been bought? Because everything had to go to the tailor, and everything had to be custom made. And even the Chatan, the rabbi's son, still didn't have his suit for the wedding. The family didn't understand what was going on, and of course they knew better than to ask the Apter Rav directly. So instead they would give a little hint here and there. And the great rabbi, he told them, everything in good time. There's nothing to worry about. But it's not that he was ignoring what was happening. He just didn't have the money for a huge wedding and for all of the expenses required for a wedding like that. And the reason was because the Apter Rav was known for giving away all the money that he had in his house every night. If there was a coin left in the house somewhere, the rabbi couldn't sleep, and he would get up at night and walk the streets until he found someone who needed it, and then he could go back to sleep. So the rabbi didn't have a single kopek to his name, and for sure he didn't have the money for clothes or wagon drivers or the dowry for the bride. Nothing. So he just waited. He knew that Hashem would come through eventually, somehow, and he didn't show, and he remained happy and joyous all the time, and just focused on what he needed to do every day. But time was running out because the wedding was set for a certain date, and as one day turned into the next, the wedding was coming closer, and still, the rabbi had not hired any wagon drivers. Now the wagon drivers' wagons were ready to go. The horses were in great shape, the axles were greased, the seats were looking like brand new, and so the wagon drivers decided that they would send 3 representatives to the rabbi to find out what's going on and sign a deal with him to get things moving along. So they showed up at the rabbi's house. The rabbi welcomes them in. Shalom aleichem, aleichem shalom. And the rabbi says to them, what are you guys worried about? There's nothing to worry about. Don't you know that Hashem is running the world? And nobody knows exactly how things are going to happen. But what we do know is that Hashem will make things happen, all in good time. But the drivers weren't so happy about this, and they said, Rabbi, listen, it's true that we're just simple people. We don't know anything like you. But one thing we do know, we know what it is to drive a wagon from here to the wedding. And Rabbi, with all due respect, even if we were going to leave tomorrow, it would be a miracle if we got there even one day before the wedding. So unless you're planning on making some miracle, we better get going and sign a deal. A few minutes after the wagon drivers finished speaking, there was a knock at the door. The rabbi opens the door, and a young man and an older man come walking inside. The older man takes a sack of coins and drops it on the table. And then he proudly announces, 1,000 gold coins. The Abder Rav looks at him and he says, 1,000 gold coins? What are you talking about? What is this money? Who are you? What's going on here? And now the older man, it was his turn to look confused. He turned to the Abder Rav and he said, Rabbi, you don't remember me? The rabbi said, I'm sorry, my sweetest friend, you're a wonderful, sweet person, but I have no idea what's going on here. And the man said, around 20 years ago, my wife and I hadn't had children after being married for many years. And I came to you miserable and depressed, and I said, Rabbi, please, you have to give me a bracha, a blessing, for children. I'll do whatever it takes, whatever you say. And you said to me, all you had to do was ask. May Hashem bless you with a healthy child that should grow up leTorah, leChuppah, u'lema'asim tovim. They should grow up to Torah and get married and do good things with his life. So the older man turns to the younger man and he says, so you see, Rabbi, your blessing worked. Because this is my son, who's now 20 years old. And I made a promise to myself that on the day that my son or daughter, whichever was born to me, would get married, I would bring 1,000 gold coins to you, Rabbi. And since my son is getting married this week, here I am to fulfill my long-standing pledge, 1,000 gold coins that I've been saving up for 20 years. The Abder Rav thanks the man, blesses him with parnasa and health and shalom bayit, and that his son should have the same. And then he turns his eyes to heaven and he says, Ribono shel olam, thank you, Master of the Universe, for not forgetting me. The rabbi walked the couple out, and then the drivers were standing there with big smiles on their faces, saying, Nu, Rabbi, now can we sign the contract? And the rabbi said, yes, let's go. Put the paper on the table. Let's sign it. And they went through the details of the contract, how many wagons were needed, how many stops they needed to make along the way, and how the payment would be given out. They shook hands, and everyone was happy. And the drivers went to the marketplace to share with everybody that the deal had finally been made, and that the rabbi would be buying the clothes and food and everything that they needed for the wedding. Then the rabbi took the rest of the money, presented it to his wife, and said, take care of anything else that needs to be done. The wagons are taken care of. And 2 days later, everything was ready, and the long caravan of wagons headed out of the town. As the Rebbe was sitting there with his Chassidim, one of the Chassidim turned to the Rebbe and said, Rebbe, had we known that the reason that you were delaying this whole time was because you didn't have enough money, we would have gone around and collect the money in one day. The Abder Rav said, yeah, I knew that. And also, if I had asked for the money, people would have jumped over themselves to give me the money. But I wanted it to come directly from Hashem. Since every day I gave away everything I had and put my faith in the Kadosh Baruch Hu, in Hashem, I wanted it to come directly from him. And so when the father and son showed up and put that money on the table, I knew that was the sign that Hashem had answered my prayers.